Oh, Deja Vu.
Essentially, I think there's two broad explanations. One would be due to the brain, and one would be due to the world.
What's deja vu?
Deja vu is the experience of finding something familiar when you know that you shouldn't.
I can remember for me, the first time that I ever had it was walking into my childhood home and I opened the door and then I thought, wasn't I just here? Like, didn't this just happen?
Can I ask how old you were?
Probably, let's go under 13, between 8 and 13.
I just asked because it's an interesting question we've got going on at the moment because deja vu seems pretty late to arrive to our memory system, like maybe as late as 10 years old before you have your first.
So, like, what's happening in our brain when we experiencing it?
Just in from your ears a little bit is a part of the brain called the medial temporal cortex. That's where the hippocampus lies. That's where the kind of main machinery of memory lies. That part of the brain is also responsible for signaling when we have a memory. So it might kind of raise awareness that, oh, a memory is being experienced right now. But with deja vu, what we think is happening is that signal happens by accident, as a kind of neuronal mistake. And then the frontal cortex, which is responsible for fact-checking, for higher-order cognition, for making sure that everything is consistent in how we're thinking about things, frontal cortex kicks in and says, hang on a minute, that's not consistent with what I know to be true about everything else in what I'm experiencing right now. So that familiarity must be false. And so you end up dismissing that familiarity as something strange.
Like, I get the idea of, okay, it's kind of a misfiring between these two systems, but what causes the two systems to misfire?
Essentially, I think there's two broad explanations. One would be due to the brain, and one would be due to the world. So let's go with the brain first. With the brain, it could just be one of those things. We know that people with migraine get deja vu occasionally. We know that when you're tired, you get it. It seems that you're more likely to have it with drug use. There are certain types of epilepsy which can lead to frequent experiences of deja vu. So all of that suggests that there's a physiological cause. And the other explanation is that it's something in the outside world. There's like a similarity in the outside world that we haven't detected. So deja vu is caused by an overlap between something stored in your mind and something that exists in the environment. The equivalent would be if you go to your friend's apartment for the first time and she's got her furniture laid out in a certain configuration, which is similar to how your grandparents' apartment is laid out, you know, with the window here and the fireplace here, the television here, etc. You'll have a certain kind of easiness in which you'll perceive that environment and you'll interpret that as familiarity. So it'll generate something like a deja vu. And it's just the overlap between this apartment you never visited before and an apartment you know well, or you know, or you don't know so well, but you've retained somewhere in the brain.
How long does it last? In the sense that I know the times that I've had it, it felt like I was in it for a while.
It's not long. It's never more than kind of 2 or 3 seconds. But that, I think that can feel longer because you're stuck in the moment and it's kind of intense. And those kinds of intense psychological experiences, I think you can feel like it's lasting for 10 seconds, but maybe it's only lasting for 2 seconds, I think.
I would, like, just thinking back at the times that I've had it, I would say I get like two or three that's weirds in there. Like, that's weird. Oh, that's weird. And then it's kind of over. Like, I notice a couple of things. Like, is that a scientific term?
No, that's not a scientific thing, but I'm with you on that. I mean, certainly, I think it's worth saying that there's different types of deja vu, and maybe some people don't have all of the types. There's not very many different mysterious types like that, but there's certainly shorter and longer versions. Like there's there's that very strong one that I've only had a few times in my life where you feel, whoa, this is, it's like I can predict the future. And you even have like, sometimes you even have like a premonition, like a vision of the future. And I've had that just a few times in my life. Other times you can have a deja vu, which is a bit more like, whoa.
It's interesting you said, like, I can predict the future. Like, the first time I had it, I remember feeling like that. Like, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen next. And now it's just kind of like, oh, that was weird.
Yeah.
Is it beneficial to us in any way? Like, is there any reason that our brains would do this? Or is it just, you've got a massively complex thing in there, like this stuff happens?
Errors happen, but the beneficial thing you're talking about is that we've got a built-in error monitoring system in this really complex system. And that built-in error monitoring system is able to catch these mistakes before they affect our behavior. And that's really important. If we started acting on deja vus, then we'd be acting on incorrect information. As it is, we just have this kind of weird internal conflict and then carry on as though it hasn't happened. So yeah, I would say it is beneficial, even if it feels like it's a weird glitch.
You mentioned other types. So the one that I'm familiar with, which I'm going to butcher the crap out of the pronunciation, is Jamais Vu?
Yeah, Jamais Vu, yeah.
Jamais Vu. That's much more fancy sounding.
Well, we've been doing more research on that lately, partly because it's a bit easier to work with in the laboratory, let's say, because you can provoke it quite easily. But first, before I talk about how we provoke it, it's seen as like the opposite of deja vu, and in fact, it's the opposite in the sense that in Jamais Vu you have the sensation of unreality or unfamiliarity for something which you know to be familiar or normal. So the examples that are the best are, most people have had it once or twice for words. People who use a lot of words, for instance, you can be writing a word. I had it once for the word this, and I'm writing the word this, and it's the word this. I know on some level it's correct, but it just doesn't look right anymore. So you get that kind of, that's not right. And some people tell me that, yeah, they've been so convinced that they can't, spell a word that they look it up on a dictionary or they Google it. And it's just, it still looks wrong, even though they've Googled it and there's the word there. It's like, well, that it looks wrong. You can get it for other people's faces. I remember having it once for my father's face, and it was like I was looking at my father just in a new way. Like, instead of like, is that what my dad really looks like? I just have to say that I think it's fairly normal. It shouldn't happen all the time, but I think it's even weirder than deja vu. I think we know it to be less frequent than deja vu. It happens less frequently, and it's maybe only about half of the population that experiences it, but they might be related, because we find that the people who have more deja vus are the people that have more jamais vus as well. So there seems to be some relationship between them. If you're the kind of person that gets deja vu, you're also the kind of person that gets jamais vu.
I can only think of one time when I've had that, and I was listening to some YouTube video about the X-Men mutant apocalypse, and they just kept saying apocalypse over and over and over again so many times. I was like, wait, who the hell is Apocalypse? Like, it was really odd where I suddenly forgot that was a word or anything about it. It was just
your experience. So that's what we do in the laboratory. If we want to give somebody jamais vu, we can just ask them to write the same word over and over and over again. So when I was a naughty school child, I wrote lines, and I remember thinking, whoa, this word's getting pretty weird. And in fact, if you just keep writing stuff, it loses its meaning, and you might have like this wave of like weirdness as you're like, that's not a word anymore, exactly like you had for apocalypse.
So if it kind of happens when you do something that seems repetitive, why wouldn't it happen on like my drive to work or cooking eggs for the 50,000th time? Like, why doesn't it happen when I do other repetitive tasks?
there's not an immediate repetition. So maybe if you drove back and forth, like I'd play a lot of music, and in my band, I I always have that, like, how many times have we done this? Or like, I've forgotten how to play it. Like, you get it more with that kind of immediate repetition. And musicians and performers seem to get it quite a lot, where they lose something they've done millions of times. So I think it's more that level of repetition than a repeated journey. On the other hand, I will say that, like, repeated journeys are an example of how memory works, because lots of people have had that experience, and I know I've had that experience of, like, I get home, I park the car, I come inside the house, I don't remember anything about the journey home. I don't remember anything. I could have. Did I run someone over? How did I get home? What did I do? Was I paying attention? And it's like you've kind of dissociated. You've become split from, like, the you that's driving your car. And you know very well that if something bad had happened, you would have braked, and you were paying attention, you were driving well, but it's just not. It's not got anything distinct about it.
Is that why kind of you like it? Is that part of it, that idea that when something becomes really repetitious like that, and we can't remember, like, did I lock the door? I don't even remember what I did yesterday. Does that qualify as jamais vu or not? Not quite.
Well, so that's just an excellent question, because we do conceive it like that, and we haven't done that research, but researchers have said that repeated checking, like that obsessive compulsive repeated checking, certainly did I lock the door, that does lead to these jamais vu like feelings, and it becomes meaningless. So then you are unable to say whether you locked the door, because you went so many times to check whether you locked the door. And certainly a way around that is to film yourself locking the door, or to try and do something very distinctive when you lock the door. But I mean, that's locking the door, driving the same route. They're all the same thing. They're habits that you kind of do mindlessly, and then when you come back to it, it's like, oh, I can't remember anything about that. I don't know what I did or anything.
So there's deja vu, jamais vu. Are there other ones too?
So I mean, there are some people that say, there's as many different types of deja experiences as there are kind of like past participles in the French language. So, like, there's déjà vu for the feeling that you've already drunk something. There would be déjà entendu for the feeling that you've already heard something. So, almost anything you do that has a French word associated with it, you could make a déjà experience about those things. I think there's déjà vu and jamais vu. We've also worked a bit on déjà vécu. And déjà vécu, it wasn't us who proposed that for the first time, but we've kind of gone with that idea. Scientifically, what we're trying to do with the difference between déjà vu and déjà vécu is have déjà vu, which is like a more generic, weaker form, and déjà vécu, which is a stronger kind of a form. And I'm being a bit hesitant because it's like a theoretical idea that makes sense according to how memory is organized, but I haven't got any killer data from my laboratory or work that we've been doing, which really makes me convinced that we've got something qualitatively different. It might just be that we've got weaker déjà vus, like we've already talked about, like rapid, not much information comes to mind, and then a much stronger kind of déjà vu, which is based on feeling you can see the future, or you're stuck in a memory experience or something like that. So I think there's stronger forms and weaker forms of déjà vu, and you can watch this space as to whether déjà vécu becomes a thing. But I mean, certainly it's a word we've used in our scientific work. But for now, I think the jury's out as to whether it is something qualitatively different from just a strong déjà vu.
Okay, you knew this one was coming. What do you think about the idea that some people have that déjà vu is from past lives?
I think it's a really romantic notion. And I don't say that with any kind of negative judgment. It's an idea that seems to make sense of how kind of strange, how unusual the sensation is. But I don't think it carries much weight scientifically. And the reason I say that is because you can, if you're willing to go to extremes, you can give yourself deja vu for almost anything. And when I say extremes, I mean extremes. So there was a neurosurgeon in the early 20th century called Wilder Penfield. He was really interested in brain surgery for epilepsy. What you need to make sure when you're doing brain surgery for epilepsy, though, is that you don't mess around with anything that you can't get back, or that you're going to find you're going to have real difficulty getting back, like language, right? So what he would do is, as part of the surgery, he would remove part of someone's skull, get access to their brain, and he would draw a grid on their skull and start stimulating bits of the grid systematically, just to make sure that any area he was thinking of removing wouldn't interfere with language. Of course, the patient would have to be speaking as they were doing this, otherwise he wouldn't know if it was interfering with language or not. And what he found was that by stimulating certain areas of the brain, he could get people to have dreamy state experiences that they often described as being like in a dream, almost like deja vu. And that would be applied to whatever it was they were experiencing at the time. So you could give them something, you get them reading a passage of a book, and that passage, if you stimulated a particular part of the brain at that particular time, would feel as though it was familiar to them. So you can kind of shortcut the brain into experiencing deja vu in a way that doesn't rely on anything other than the neurons in your brain firing in a particular way. So I think that's almost certainly, from a kind of basic kind of neurobiology perspective, what's going on. We've got the familiarity center of the brain firing and saying that this feels like a memory, even when it isn't.